In our Data Masterclass podcast, data leaders share their unique stories. In this episode, we talk to Jordi Casanellas, the head of decision science for MPV and R&D at Bayer, about his team's journey from data science to machine learning operations, and now to generative artificial intelligence at one of the largest pharmaceutical companies in the world. Let us welcome your host, Alex Borek.
Hello, data and AI leaders. I have a huge pleasure today to welcome Jordi Casanellas, who is the head of data science for MPV, and we will explain what it is, and R&D at Bayer, one of the largest global pharmaceutical companies in the world. We will talk about a lot of interesting topics, in particular machine learning in the pharmaceutical industry and generative AI and NLP, because that's what Jordi is doing these days. Welcome to the show, Jordi.
Hi, welcome, Alex. Welcome, data leaders in the audience. Pleasure to be here and share my experiences and in this conversation with you, Alex.
Perfect. Maybe to start it off, if you could basically explain a little bit, what is your role at Bayer, and what you're responsible for?
Good. So I'm leading a team of data scientists and machine learning engineers in Bayer Pharma, and we support from from the IT department, we support business colleagues in specific functions in our pharma business, which are medical affairs area, pharmacovigilance area, and R&D. Yes, and then so my job is to understand their business problems and help them ideate how AI can support them, and then make that possible normally in digital products that are integrated in their processes. That's
really cool. So that's the mystery around MAPV. So it's medical affairs, pharmacovigilance, and R&D.
Yeah.
Almost.
Pharmacovigilance, yes.
So I think a lot of our listeners will not have that pharmaceutical background. So could you maybe give a little bit of insight? What is medical affairs and what is pharmacovigilance about?
So let's say for pharma, there is, on one hand, let me start with R&D. R&D, they do, let's say, the drug discovery process, investigate new drugs, and they go through clinical trials to have the approvals from the authorities. So this is, let's say, a huge task. But after a new drug is already commercialized, then we need to follow up on the adverse effects that this drug is now having on the patients. Clinical trials may happen only with 100, 1,000 patients. When it's commercialized, we have millions of people, so there are new adverse effects. Pharmacovigilance, among other things, monitors different ways to report these adverse events, and then takes action, reports to the regulatory agencies regarding these adverse events. And medical affairs, similarly, also mostly in this phase, also wants to understand, for example, what are the challenges the doctors are facing when using these drugs, to detect if there is the need, for example, to generate more evidence of the efficacy of this drug. For example, for a particular group of patients, the doctors may say, oh, look, I'm not using it for children because actually there is no evidence. Your clinical trials were done only for older adults. So they detect, for example, this need, and they may run either new clinical trials, or another way in which we as data scientists can support is analyzing real world data, or so not data collected in a clinical trial framework, which is much more controlled. It's an experiment you run and you design, but data that comes from the hospitals, from real usage and real health data.
That's wow.
Among other topics, yeah. I can give more examples later on, yeah. No.
That sounds very complex. Yeah, we will definitely go into some examples. But before we jump into that, so how did you come to that role? What was your personal journey?
So I'm based in Berlin, but I'm actually from Barcelona, and my background is in physics. And I did research in astrophysics actually for many years. First in Portugal, then I moved to Germany to continue my research here. And I switched then from science with data to data science when I was already here in Berlin about 8 years ago. And I did data science consulting first for 5 years. I learned a lot, many different industries, technologies, a lot of very cool projects. However, I wanted to work on something that I would see the purpose of it a bit more clear. In consulting, I had, let's say, varied clients. And in the pharmaceutical industry, with the good and the bad, but we are still working to help patients, which is, let's say, more meaningful for me.
Great. So, wow, from astrophysics to data science and ML in the pharmaceutical industry, that's a long journey. Really good to hear. What was your astrophysics research about?
Well,
for the average layman.
Don't ask me, because we can have the full hour on that.
I know.
No, it was about the dark matter of the universe. So I was doing numerical simulations of how stars are born, how stars evolve, and how they look like. And then dark matter is something that we don't know how it is, or what is it made of, for example. We don't know even if it exists. It should account for 80% of the matter of the universe, but we don't know what it is. So I was making models to say, look, if dark matter would be in this way, it will influence the stars in some way in my simulations. Then I was comparing that to observations, to data, analyzing the data, seeing if the observations of stars could tell us something about the nature of the dark matter of the universe.
So you basically compared the real life observations with your data in the simulations, saw if there were contradiction to your model, basically.
Exactly.
They would support.
Yeah. Some models would say, look, if dark matter is in this way that some theoreticians predict, stars would explode. And we still see stars. So dark matter may not be in this way. That would be the more extreme case, of course.
Wow. I would love to spend actually an hour talking about this.
An hour is nice. 8 years doing this specific topic, it's too much, I would say. That's one of the reasons why I was looking forward to apply my skills to, let's say, other more tangible things too.
To something closer to the average normal life, yeah, basically. Yes.
Yeah.
Well, which takes us to your life in the pharmaceutical industry. What do you know? I mean, you probably worked with several industries before you came into this industry in consulting. Is that right?
Yeah.
So what do you think is special when it comes to machine learning in the pharmaceutical? Is there anything?
Well, on one side, the first thing that comes to my mind is that is a very regulated environment. Mm-hmm. And so I would imagine if you are in a technological startup, that you could bring your models into production without caring so much about some regulations. And we do have digital products in my team to support pharma, which are, let's say, very internal, and then you are more agile. But if you are talking about medical devices or validated systems that are used in processes that are regulated, then we need to go through, let's say, a bit boring processes before the models can be used.
Could you? I think this is really interesting, that difference, because everyone heard of the heavy regulations inside the healthcare and pharmaceutical industry. But now from a day-to-day perspective as a machine learner, what are the extra burdens? Could you give us a glimpse, of what it means, in practice, when you have to do you have to fill in more forms, or do you have to do extra tests? Do you have to use special software? What are the practicalities of that?
First, I should say, in my team, we are not directly involved in medical devices. Medical devices would be the type of thing that it's more strongly regulated from my experience. So that does require some best practices that, of course, we all do when we do our software development, documentation, testing, everything. But if you are building a medical device, you are required to follow that and document that from the very beginning. It can be, let's say, it can add a lot of overhead. For some of the, if we bring digital products to support processes that are regulated, like, for example, how a pharmaceutical company detects adverse events in text that comes to us, and how we report it to the regulatory authorities. In practice, in day-to-day, that actually only impacts us more on the documentation side. So documentation should be very exhaustive. but you still have some freedom. So, for example, you should document exactly how you develop or how you deploy new versions, but you can still do it in your own way.
So are there also, besides documentation, higher testing standards in such an environment? For any things you want to deploy in particular?
Yes, for medical devices for sure. In the products we are involved, they are mostly internal processes, so regulations are not so strong. One challenge that I see, and probably is certainly common to other industries. If you let me, go a bit out of your question.
Of course.
Is when we build products, digital products that have a strong machine learning component, the way these products are operated. So after we develop them, so we would love to see, let's say, this DevOps way of working in which the same people who develops then operates it. Sometimes in some, let's say, big companies, these are still, if you go outside machine learning development, it would make sense to have, an external company doing the operations of all your IT products. They may not have the right machine learning skills to really operate, improve, understand the models. That's one of the challenges we face, to change the culture internally on how digital products that have machine learning should be operated, let's say, after you develop them.
Yeah, and do I hear it right that it's basically a transformational change that is required to get you from that, and also additional skills, so to do really ML ops in such an environment?
Yeah, so actually from my team, and if I look at the same team even before I joined, let's say 4 years ago, 5 years ago, it was much more data scientist, the science part of data science, and working in notebooks, doing prototypes. And now my team, the majority of my team are machine learning engineers and also machine learning operation engineers. So we really need this type of skills and this type of work once we have several machine learning, so several products being used nowadays in the business functions that have machine learning in them.
So which means that in your team, you have the ML ops expertise built up over the years. Is that a right reflection?
Yes. It's actually, in my team, it's actually quite new to have, let's say, this specific role. We went from only data scientist to data scientist and machine learning engineers, and now also machine learning operation engineers for the last, let's say, 2 years.
Great. So you had that MLOps journey already, at least a good proportion of it. Mm-hmm. What are your first learnings, on that journey? What are your learnings on that MLOps journey? It's quite a difference to go into such a mode. Is that right?
Sure, and there are some
identity changes as a team.
Well, we try not to have, let's say, very strict borders between profiles, although the title, of course, is a different one. But we like to have these M-shaped profiles, or so we like to work together and not say like, okay, I'm the data scientist, then I give the model to you, you are the engineer, you put it into production, and then you give it to the machine learning operation. So we work all together. We try to work together in all the process. So in this sense, yeah, it's a bit of different roles. I forgot your initial question, sorry.
No, it's fine. But I think it's the question of ML ops, and the changes, I find it quite fascinating because you've been through that journey as, from a pure data science team to a data science plus machine learning engineering and operations team.
Yeah, it changed also
basic.
Also in terms of IT, how a big IT department governs products. So there are decisions made at the higher level of, okay, this provider will take care to operate all products. And then you come up with machine learning products, and then things should change a bit. It takes time. We are also in this fight to help the organization evolve and be more flexible for machine learning.
And as you operate machine learning products, what are the special challenges that you see, or even deploy and operate? Well,
the classical things in which you want to monitor your models, make sure that if they stop performing, for example, detecting adverse events, so that could not go wrong. And if it goes wrong, you want to know immediately. So you need to have a good automated monitoring in place, and then some practices to, like, say, warning, re-engineering, and you want to have that, let's say, very well designed. And then, of course, you can think it's a field that changes. It changes so fast that with new models, so you may think, okay, I have this model, it's good enough. But after 1 year, okay, now there is ChatGPT. Can we do things differently? So you may want also to update your models, not because they go wrong, they do wrong, but now maybe you can do now much better.
Right. What do you see in terms of use cases as the key use cases in general, in the pharma industry? Can be inside your domains, can be also in general. What would you say are the big, I would say, killer machine, maybe that's not the right word when you work in pharma, the top use cases in the industry for machine learning that you saw in general in the industry, not necessarily at Bayer, but in general in the industries, evolve over time?
So game changers, it's a bit far from what I do. I would put them more in R&D. So for drug discovery, there are new ways of developing drugs, like using cell and gene therapy, for example, using immunotherapy. And Bayer, for example, has invested a lot now in cell and gene therapy. When doing drug discovery from some of new ways of creating drugs, their machine learning plays a role. And I know there are large language models also used to simulate the structure of proteins. I don't know if that's used for cell and gene therapy. Maybe it's used for small molecules. But yeah, it's maybe a bit out of my domain. But machine learning can help, if it helps in drug discovery, to bring new compounds, new active substances that help patients. That's what changed the industry or change a company. If you can discover new active substances that make sense. That are the bigger game changers. Then for me to help in the internal processes, it's more about making sense of a lot of data, of text data. That's most of the products we have. And that could also support drug discovery. But in my case, it supports mostly internal processes.
Right. What are your lessons learned so far implementing machine learning, in such an environment?
I don't know. I could highlight the importance of, for me, I'm quite new to pharma, the importance of understanding the pain points and the challenges our colleagues in business have. So, and the communications, so how good you are understand them, their problems, how good you let them understand how machine learning can support. Here, there is a lot of value beyond then how you develop and how you put your models in production, but would be how you identify where machine learning can help most and make that a reality.
Mm. And in terms of the tech stack in the pharma industry, is it that for machine learning, is that do you have limitations compared to other industries because you're regulated? Like, do you see more, for example, on-prem, or do you say you are also now more and more working in the cloud? What's today's reality in the industry, or what's the sort of status at the moment in the industry?
Of course, everything is in the cloud, and it needs to go through IT risk assessment and so on, but it's totally fine to work in the cloud. Some limitations could be, for example, health data of patients. It depends very much in the country. So, for example, in Germany, pharma companies, we cannot analyze patient health data directly. In the US, it's very different. So we do run studies using US health data of patients. For Germany, we can run these studies, but we cannot, let's say, own the data or analyze the data directly. We have to do it through external parties. Another particularity of pharma regarding text data would be that for example, we are not allowed, or we prefer not to interact with the patients or doctors in free text. Let's say, put a chatbot in Bayer.com to allow any patient to write whatever, because we are required by law to scan all the interactions for the report of adverse event, for example. So it could not be that a patient tells us, look, I'm feeling bad because I took this drug, and we take no action on it. So we cannot afford having millions of interactions per day and not be able to scan it. And here is where machine learning can also, you were asking about game changers. So that could be one of the transformations that we may be able to interact with patients and doctors in a more, let's say, at a bigger scale. And now it's done only, let's say, in a structured way with our representatives, let's say, because we really have to review each interaction almost manually.
Fascinating. Oh, and I also, took from a discussion that we had beforehand that you are really now looking also in generative AI, and that is becoming also very relevant for your industry. Why do you believe that generative AI is of relevance also, in such a very special environment?
In general, I think it will help a lot any industry. We may see that coming with, for example, the Office suite, Microsoft Copilot 360. That could really help us, all of us, to be more productive in our emails, creating documents, PowerPoint, etc. For the pharma industry, I see also potential. Generative AI can help to generate protein structures, for example. So in drug discovery, can help also generate images and help us with these constraints we have of the data. For example, medical imaging, it's really expensive and difficult to get a lot of this high quality data for Bayer to do research. It takes years, it takes a lot of data privacy, and it takes a lot of money. And at the end, you have 200 images. With generative AI, and that's one of the projects we have, you can recreate, let's say, more training data for your models, for instance, to improve them, or for other applications. But for images, we see also some use cases there. And for text, that's what touches me more. So far, you can think that, for example, regulatory affairs, it's a department that deals with the health authorities. This is a lot of generation of reports, communications back and forth. So far, we have digital products that help these people to search among these thousands or hundreds of thousands of documents backwards. But this is search, which is keyword search or semantic search. And then they have to go through a list of 20 results. It's very manual. We want to enable that you can question your thousands of documents and receive an answer already from them with ChatGPT and technologies we build on top of that. And that applies, for example, for regulatory affairs, but also you could think of all these interactions we have with patients and with doctors. For more scientifically, like in the medical affairs department, but also commercially, we have our commercial representatives visiting doctors, generating a lot of text, how to make sense of all this amount of text to detect, for example, trends on usage of the drugs or on complaints of the doctors or of the patients. Instead of searching among all these documents, let's just ask the question directly to a system. What is the opinions of doctors in Italy about this specific drug to be used in these patients? And then you find it from these thousands of interactions and you have it fast insights. So that could also bring a lot of, let's say, efficiency in many of the internal processes.
That sounds great. And it also reminds me of what the promise of IBM Watson was 10 years ago or 8 years ago. We all know this, or most of us know the story that IBM Watson had some troubles in meeting the expectations of the promises made because the technologies maybe weren't there yet at that point, at least to the strength, to the full production ready capabilities. Now, these days, it looks much more promising. So would you say that it's the same use cases, but this time we believe it can work?
Certainly the expectation is very high, and I also try to manage it myself because I could not overpromise that these things will change a lot. I would say I'm optimistic, but we are not mature enough now. So, I mean, the big revolution is now with ChatGPT. It's like a change in how these language models work. We are working towards bringing that to our business users and bring value. We are not mature enough. So it's a field that changed very fast. I hope I can go back in 6 months and tell you we have all these success stories. I hope the promises will be fulfilled at least. If we only deliver just 20% of the value that we expect now, that will be already a success, I would say.
I fully agree. And would you see it similarly that the use cases are actually very similar to the ones that IBM Watson wanted to solve in health a while ago, and just this time we have better technology? Or or do you rather observe a complete new set of use cases?
the big difference I would say is that technology has changed. No, maybe the promises were the same, but IBM Watson was using models that now are totally outdated. And I mean, not IBM Watson, but let's say not to personify a specific vendor solution, but from the solutions of back then, in some cases we were able to develop in-house things that have already replaced these older systems. I think they certainly overpromised. And now I see it a bit differently. So the technology or language models, they are much more, they are much better. And I think we as data scientists, we are able to evaluate a bit more what is overpromising or not. So maybe a business person could now jump into ChatGPT and think that they will solve maybe even more than what is possible. But if you define very well your use case, and there are some things we know they work, like summarization or information extraction, you can give a full text and ask a question on the text. Some things already work quite well, so it's not overpromising to say that if we put that in the middle of the right business process, that will bring value.
Great. And how do you do that? I mean, how do you approach the business actually? Do they approach you with ideas? Do you partner with them? To identify the right opportunities and also to partner up, because at the end it's a partnership with the business. Get something like that into the heart of some core processes.
So for ChatGPT or similar generative AI topics, we are still figuring out how to do it. And different business teams may have different level of maturity on their digital journey or understanding of AI. So it depends very much. We try to have in my team and let's say my broader teams, my similar data science teams, we try to have people one let's say engagement lead for each of the business functions. So this person builds a relation of trust with the business stakeholders, understands with time, every time more the process and so on. And then there is a fluid interaction in which we can work together towards what good solutions would be, a more flexible way that it's not like us going there now and say, look, you have to use ChatGPT because I think it's cool. That's not working. Well, for ChatGPT it's a bit different. For ChatGPT you have everybody coming to us and saying, oh, I want to use it. But that's not the standard, let's say. And we it's really important to do this path both ways. Yeah.
So when we talk about text, generative AI and text and NLP, which tech stacks you believe are the ones to look at? You know, do you look rather at open source ones? Do you go more on the OpenAI stack or Google stack, or are there any recommendation or any learnings so far? You know, for other data leaders.
So my expertise it's not say that deep. I would say presently, OpenAI models are the best ones, and that's the present situation. So that's what I would recommend to use. Of course, the trend could be then to fine tune or even to create smaller models for more specific tasks. And here, open source community may help a lot. There are already frameworks that allow you to train smaller models with similar capabilities. I would say they are not yet in the level that OpenAI models ChatGPT can bring now. But in the next month, that could easily change.
And as you start leveraging OpenAI as in a corporate environment, is it easy to get started? Basically, you get the API and that's it. What are your experiences so far?
Well, in any big company, you will have a strong cybersecurity department, which would enforce that. I mean, you really don't want your data to go out. So we are even starting just small, experimentally, and with a lot of care. One obvious way to make it more secure is use the API that Microsoft Azure offers. Azure instead of OpenAI. Microsoft is normally a certified partner by the major companies, and it's easy to trust, and you can opt out so that they don't store your data. Of course, they don't use it to retrain any public models. And they offer a different level of security and assurances to our cybersecurity teams. Then is, okay, which data can I send there? public data, it's internal data, secret data. So you need, of course, to do a lot of work to validate the system and also educate or work together with the cybersecurity teams, because these are new technologies, new partners. So you have to work together with them. And it's good to have them on board. No? If they are as excited as you are, then it's much easier. And I'm lucky for that. So then together you see how to make it possible and compliant, but it's not easy.
What I find interesting is that you could have there are sort of two standpoints here. Like one is, okay, when you're on Azure Cloud, for example, you could also talk about Google Cloud and AWS Cloud. It's just another service, and you use thousands of services across the company, every one of us, every day. And you send data to an API and you get data back, and it's all under contracts to ensure that the data is private, secure, so on. And there are also cloud security measures to do that. So one standpoint would be, this is just another cloud service, and if I have a framework to use that particular cloud like Azure in my company, it should not be a problem. Another standpoint is, hey, hang on a minute, this is different because maybe the machine continues to learn based on my data outside the normal way of cloud services. And it seems like a lot of people are worried about the second thing. And I actually, I had to laugh a bit when you said, Microsoft tells you that it's that they don't store your data. Well, Apple has apparently had a mistrust towards that. I just read, I think this morning, that Apple leadership told their employees not to use OpenAI in Azure because they mistrust Microsoft, that they would not use it. But maybe that's also due to the rivalry that Apple and Microsoft have. But I just had to think about it when you said Microsoft doesn't store data. Probably it's true, but also it's interesting to see that Apple mistrusts that.
Yeah, and I would say any strong cybersecurity team would mistrust it too. For me, it's like, okay, it's Microsoft. They are saying that. Fine. I mean, we have all our secret emails with them. But for example, in our case, that's not enough also for the cybersecurity team in our case. So they really want assurances from Microsoft that this is not happening. Yeah. Not only, let's say, a Q&A documentation in a website saying that.
Despite already most of us, having our data in the cloud already, so they already have that data. But again, for those services, we want to have extra assurances by having contracts and having other, basically for security.
Because AI awakes more, we are more fearful, or if the people does not know exactly, for example, how the training of ChatGPT or a large language model works, they think that is being trained all the time, that you interact, or so because it's a new technology, there is more like, what if what we put here starts popping out to another company? We need to help that this is clear for everybody, and because I do trust that Microsoft does what they say.
I think it will be hard to do anything anymore if you don't even trust the big three cloud providers at all. Because that's the foundation of a lot of digital services that all companies around the world build. But it is an interesting time. So, but bringing it back down to earth, like when you start using these things, do you start to train your own models, or do you simply use the APIs? What's the approach?
I would say to start, you also actually want to start small, like the low-hanging fruits. So I would say just connect to the API. Start with simple use cases with public data, summarization, create content for social media, whatever. Something that already works, does not need customization. Of course, we have plans to go beyond that. Tune models, connect GPT so it gives answers not only from the data it was trained on, but from internal company data sources. The internet, from external databases, publications, literature. These are the things that we have in mind to go a bit beyond just calling the API. And if you think of generative AI more in general, of course, going to image, even in other Bay Area areas, for R&D, this, I mean, not myself, but this is in conversation to train these big large language models for other applications, like to simulate small molecules, microbiome, proteins, etc.
Oh, very fascinating use cases. Are the challenges or surprises, when you start experimenting with OpenAI, have you been surprised by some things that didn't work and maybe some things that worked actually astonishing well? I find one thing, for example, is that I find it quite annoying that it's only so little text you can give at once. So whenever I do start, I sometimes implement use case for myself, and when I send stuff to the API, I need to chunk up the text, and somehow, it loses the overall picture through that.
Yeah, I cannot say yet, because let's say, as I said, we are not mature enough to see which use cases are working, which not, and it's all, let's say, very experimental. I would say that what is important for us is to educate the users. So, for example, just simply make them very clear that the output can be wrong or incomplete, inaccurate, whatever. No, that's something we want every user to have it super clear. So now it may work better or worse, but it's important that everybody knows that the output can be wrong.
Oh, wonderful. So we talked about, how ML can actually create value in very, very interesting areas in the pharma industry and Mlops, and how you move from a data science team to Mlops. We also talked about generative AI and the first steps, and also the potential, but also the things that might be not so easy to start with. And, what would be overarching advice to people building up ML functions and MLOps functions, and other sort of leaders that are starting off on that journey? Now, it's not only about generative AI, but maybe broadening up a bit again.
So maybe I would say stay flexible. So instead of saying you should do things in this way, but I would say even have a multidisciplinary team. So have different profiles. You don't think before I only need machine learning engineers, and then you find people more like, more software developers. Build it. No, let's be a bit open in the role. So you have people which is better interacting with business, identifying the use cases, people which is better experimenting, people which is better putting things into production. Because you may need, even with different of your stakeholders, you may need different profiles. Also, build the relation with a bit of time in mind. So don't expect that the first use cases you will jump in will be so valuable, because you will discover things that do not work at technical level or at business process level or at political level. You will discover that in your learning process in the first year, let's say. So it's good that you start flexible from the beginning, so then you adapt quickly to what you see when you are, so while you are learning.
Oh yes, and I think that's quite important. I think message. It is a long game. I think expecting incredible results from machine learning from day one is probably the wrong expectations. I think ML is a journey and MLOps is a journey, and it's more an exponential curve rather than a linear curve, where you need to have a bit of time to mature stuff, learn how to figure out ways how to best leverage ML in that particular domain. And I really, really see that also, throughout my career, that sometimes, people expect too much in the beginning, and then they lose hope too fast, because actually there is a lot of impact coming as you grow and learn in the domain, and staying focused is really a game changer that can create massive impact over time. You see then more and more use cases also next to your use case as you learn about the domain, as you learn about the data, as you build up that partnership, very close partnership with the business experts, with the people who can actually bring that stuff into operations and into the operational processes, like you said in the beginning.
I totally agree. Exactly. Yeah.
Oh, you are also part, Jordi, of the Data Masterclass Europe 2023. What makes you excited about this event?
Well, actually, I was very surprised to see. So normally in the events, they try not strong enough, and at the end it's just like one person talking, people just listening, and then after half an hour it's phones, laptops, and so on. And how the Data Masterclass is designed, I like very much this interactivity, this sharing the challenges, learning from each other. I think that could bring much more value to all of us, to learn from each other, from other experiences, to learn what has worked and what has not worked for others. I think this is a good format, these workshops that are organized within the Data Masterclass. That's something I think it could work very well.
And I think for everyone who will be joining on June 21st to 23rd in Berlin, you will have the opportunity to hear also Jordi live on stage telling one of his stories in more depth with you and see him live interacting. So I hope this episode got you very much excited. I hope it also gave you value by providing a bit more insight into the pharma industry and how machine learning can add value there, and also how machine learning works in such an industrial environment, and also about some of the first learnings in leveraging generative AI in such an environment. Thank you so much for joining us at on our Data Masterclass podcast in our today's show. And I'm sure this will be very, very interesting to many data leaders out there to hear your story.
Good. Thanks to you, Alex. It was a pleasure.
Borek Data Masterclass, where great data journeys begin.